Waitress was fired for serving Vampire King. What happens next is shocking. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Let's dive into today's tale. Mia had always been a quiet, hard-working young woman. She didn't ask for much, just a steady job and a safe place to live. Her life had always been a series of small struggles, working 2 jobs, sometimes 3, just to make ends meet. Her latest job at the prestigious Blackstone restaurant was her hope for something better. But little did Mia know that this job would change her life forever. One evening, she was assigned to serve a special table, a high-profile guest. As she walked to the table, she was careful to balance the tray of expensive wines and appetizers, hoping to make a good impression. At the table sat a man who looked like he didn't belong in any restaurant, let alone a high-end one. His cold, calculating eyes scanned the room, and there was an air of mystery about him. Mia didn't recognize him, but the staff had whispered about him. He was rumored to be the Vampire King, a dangerous and ancient being who owned the restaurant. She couldn't believe it. How could such a powerful creature be sitting in her section, mere feet away? Mia's hands trembled slightly, but she kept her composure as she placed the wine glass in front of him. "Would you like me to refill your glass, sir?" she asked, trying to remain polite. He glanced up at her, his eyes glowing with an unsettling amber hue. "No need," he replied, his voice deep and smooth, sending chills down her spine. "Thank you." She gave a nod and turned to leave. But as she walked away, she felt his eyes following her every move. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, but she pushed it aside. Mia had no time to dwell on it. The night was long, and the work was never-ending. But as she was cleaning up the table later, the manager, a cold man named Greg, pulled her aside. "You shouldn't have served him," he said, his voice low and threatening. Mia's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, confused. "That man is not just any guest. He's the Vampire King," Greg hissed. "And you just made a terrible mistake by serving him like you would any other customer." Mia was stunned. The rumors were true. The man she had just served was the Vampire King. And now, she realized, she had made a grave mistake. The next day, Mia's world came crashing down. She was called into the manager's office and informed that she was being fired. "You've caused a scene by serving the Vampire King," Greg told her, his voice stern. "This is a high-end restaurant. You can't just treat him like any other customer. You've embarrassed the restaurant and violated the rules. You're dismissed." Mia couldn't believe it. She had worked so hard for this job, and now she was being fired for something she didn't even know was wrong. But as she packed her things and left the restaurant, she felt a strange sense of dread. What had she really done? Why had she been singled out? What would happen next? As she walked away from the restaurant, she couldn't shake the feeling that her encounter with the Vampire King was just the beginning. Little did she know, her life was about to take an unexpected turn, and the shocking consequences of that fateful night would unfold in ways she never could have imagined. "I knew something was wrong as soon as I stepped outside. The weight of the night hung heavily on my shoulders. I had just been fired for something I didn't even know was a crime. All I did was serve a man, a guest in the restaurant. And now, I was on the street with nothing, no job, no future. The wind bit at my skin as I walked aimlessly, my mind racing with questions. Why did they fire me? Was it really because of that man? And what did he mean when he said, 'Thank you'? I couldn't stop thinking about those cold, amber eyes that had watched me so intently. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how little I knew about the world I had been working in. Just a few hours ago, I had been serving food to the elite, trying to make ends meet. Now, I was caught up in something I couldn't even begin to understand. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my thoughts. I hesitated before answering. "Mia," my grandmother's voice crackled on the other end. "Are you okay? You were supposed to be home hours ago." I could hear the concern in her voice, but there was nothing I could say to reassure her. I had nothing to tell her except that I had been fired. "Grandma," I said, my voice shaky, "I lost my job. They let me go because I served someone wrong, someone they said was dangerous." There was a long silence on the other end. "Dangerous? Who?" she asked, sounding more confused than worried. I didn't know how to explain. I couldn't even wrap my head around it myself. I don't know, Grandma, but there's something strange about all of this. I ended the call and stood still in the middle of the sidewalk, staring at nothing. A part of me wanted to go back to the restaurant and demand answers, but I knew that would be pointless. They had made it clear I wasn't welcome there anymore. As I walked home, my thoughts swirled. What could I possibly do now? The next morning, my phone rang again. I almost didn't answer, but then I saw the unknown number flashing on the screen. Something about it made my heart race. Mia, a deep, calm voice said when I picked up. This is King Alaric. My breath caught in my throat. The Vampire King, I whispered to myself, feeling the weight of the words. I believe we need to talk, he continued. I know what happened last night, and I want to explain. Please, meet me. My mind was spinning. What was going on? Why was he calling me? How did he even know it was me? Where? I asked, barely able to speak. I'll send a car to pick you up. We need to have a conversation. His tone was commanding but strangely calm, almost as though he had all the time in the world. I couldn't refuse. I had to go, had to know what this man wanted from me. A car pulled up to the curb a few minutes later, sleek and black, the kind of car you only see in movies. The driver opened the door for me, and I stepped inside without a word. The ride felt surreal, the city blurring past as I sat in silence, my mind racing. What could he possibly want with me? What did he know about me? As the car turned onto a narrow street, I saw a massive, imposing mansion rising in front of me. It looked more like a fortress than a home. The gates opened smoothly, and we drove up a long, winding driveway. My heart pounded in my chest. The car stopped in front of the grand entrance, and the driver nodded. Go ahead. He's waiting for you inside. I stepped out of the car, my legs feeling like lead as I walked toward the enormous wooden doors. A butler in a black suit greeted me at the entrance and led me down a long corridor, the walls lined with paintings of people I didn't recognize. The air smelled of old books and something faintly floral, and I couldn't help but feel out of place. At the end of the hall, the door to a large study opened, and there he was. King Alaric. Tall, with sharp features and those same amber eyes that had haunted me all night. He looked at me with an intensity that made me want to shrink away, but I stood my ground. Mia, he said, his voice smooth and powerful. I'm sorry about what happened at the restaurant. It was never my intention for you to be caught up in this. I couldn't speak at first, the words stuck in my throat. He had known it all along, hadn't he? He had orchestrated it. You don't know me. I finally managed. Why would you care about what happened to me? He stepped closer, and I couldn't help but notice how much taller he was than me. I know more than you think, he said, his voice lowering. Last night, you did something that no one else could do. You reached my son, Kale. I stared at him, completely confused. Your son. I repeated, not understanding. But he's. I trailed off. He had been lying in that bed for 50 years, frozen, like a living corpse. Yes, King Alaric confirmed. He's been in that state for half a century. And it's all because of a curse. But, when you touched him, you did something that no one else has been able to do. You woke him, even if only for a moment. His eyes were serious, and I realized then that I had stumbled into something far bigger than myself. He continued, his voice now more urgent. The curse on my son is ancient, and it's tied to something, to someone. You, Mia, are somehow connected to it, and I need you to help me break it. I stood frozen, staring at King Alaric as he explained the situation. I had touched his son. That was the only explanation he had for why Prince Kale had shown signs of life after 50 years of lying in a comatose state. But what did it all mean? How could I, a simple waitress, have any connection to a centuries-old curse? The questions swirled in my mind, but I remained silent, unsure of what to say next. King Alaric seemed to sense my confusion and took a step closer, his eyes not leaving mine. You need to understand, he began, his voice low and intense. This curse is tied to bloodlines, ancient bloodlines. Your touch, Mia, it's not just a coincidence. There's something about you, something in your blood that resonates with the curse on my son. My heart raced as I processed his words. Was he suggesting that I had some sort of connection to the curse, or worse, to his son? I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He continued, his voice softening slightly. I've spent years searching for answers, seeking any way to break the curse. The best minds, the most powerful witches, have all failed. But your touch awakened Kale, even if just for a moment. That moment is all I need to know that there's a way forward. I could feel the weight of his words, the weight of the responsibility he was placing on me. I was just an ordinary woman, with no magical abilities, no knowledge of curses or ancient spells. I had no idea how my touch could have triggered something in the prince, but I knew one thing for sure. I was in over my head. But why me? I finally managed to ask. Why would my touch do anything? I'm just a regular girl. King Alaric gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. You're not just a regular girl, Mia, he said. You're more important than you think. He turned his gaze toward his son, who still lay motionless on the bed. Kale's curse is bound to a prophecy, one that speaks of a healer of blood who will awaken him. I believe you are that healer, Mia. I don't know how or why, but I'm convinced that your touch holds the key to breaking the curse. I shook my head, still in disbelief. You can't be serious, I whispered. How could I, of all people, be the one to break a curse that no one else can? King Alaric looked at me with a mixture of frustration and determination. I know it's hard to believe, but I've spent years searching for this answer, and everything points to you. The moment I saw you, the moment you touched my son, I knew you were the one I had been searching for. I couldn't deny the chill that ran down my spine at his words. There was something in his gaze that told me he wasn't lying, that he genuinely believed I had some sort of connection to this curse. But how could I? I had no magic, no special abilities. All I had was a connection to an ancient curse I couldn't even begin to understand. What do you need me to do? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He paused, studying me for a moment before speaking. I need you to help me wake my son. I need you to touch him again, Mia. Your touch brought him back for a moment. If we can harness that power, if we can break the curse, Kale will wake up, and everything will change. I looked over at Prince Kale, his pale skin almost glowing in the dim light of the room. He was beautiful, in an otherworldly way, but he looked so fragile, so lifeless. I didn't know how I could possibly help him, but I knew one thing. I couldn't just walk away. I had already awakened something in him. Maybe, just maybe, I could help him wake up completely. What if it doesn't work? I asked, my voice trembling. What if I can't do it? King Alaric gave me a reassuring look. Then we'll try again, and again, until we find the answer. You are not alone in this, Mia. I'll be with you every step of the way. I nodded slowly, still unsure of what I was about to do. But as I stood there, I realized that my life had already changed. No matter how much I wanted to go back to my simple, quiet life, I couldn't. I had been drawn into something bigger than myself, and now I had no choice but to see it through. As I approached the bed, my heart pounded in my chest. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. I reached out, my hand trembling, and placed it gently on Prince Kale's cold wrist. For a moment, nothing happened. And then, slowly, a warmth spread through my fingertips, and I felt a soft pulse, a sign that something was shifting, something was waking. I held my breath, waiting for more. And then, just as I thought the moment would pass, I saw his eyelids flutter. His eyes opened, just a crack, glowing with the same amber hue as his father's. I gasped, stepping back in shock. He was alive. And somehow, I had helped bring him back. I stood there, my hand still resting on Prince Kale's wrist, feeling the faint pulse that now beat beneath my fingers. It was as if the entire room had held its breath, waiting for this moment. His eyes, still glowing with an amber light, slowly focused on me. For the first time in decades, he was awake. Alive. I couldn't believe it. The moment seemed surreal, a dream I hadn't dared to hope for. King Alaric, who had been standing behind me, watching the entire scene unfold, stepped forward with a look of cautious optimism. This is it, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He's waking up. I didn't know what to say, or even what to think. I had barely touched him, and yet, his curse was already starting to break. What kind of power was this? Kale. King Alaric said softly, kneeling beside the bed, his voice trembling. Can you hear me, son? For a moment, there was nothing. Then, just as I was about to lose hope, Prince Kale's lips parted, and he whispered something, barely audible. Father. His voice was weak, but it was there. A sound, a sign of life. King Alaric's expression softened, a rare show of emotion from the usually stoic vampire king. I'm here, my son. You're safe now. I watched the exchange between father and son, my heart pounding. I had never imagined that I would witness such a personal moment. But it wasn't over yet. The curse was still there, lurking beneath the surface. There was still so much we didn't understand. What happens now? I asked, my voice shaky. King Alaric turned to me, his eyes still filled with an intensity one hadn't seen before. Now, we need to find out why the curse connected with you, he said. I've spent centuries searching for the answers, and everything points to you, Mia. His words were heavy, and I felt the weight of them deep in my chest. I had no answers, no explanations. I was just a simple waitress who had accidentally woken a prince who had been asleep for 50 years. I felt like I was standing at the edge of something much larger than I could comprehend. But why me? I asked, trying to make sense of it all. I'm not special. I'm just. I couldn't finish the sentence. What was I supposed to say? King Alaric took a deep breath, his gaze never leaving mine. You are special, Mia, he said softly. You have a connection to the ancient bloodlines, something I've only recently begun to understand. The curse on Kale, it's tied to the blood of the ones who are chosen to heal him. And somehow, you're part of that. I didn't know what he meant. I had no magical powers, no knowledge of curses or prophecies. I was just a girl who had stumbled into something much bigger than herself. But I couldn't ignore the evidence in front of me. Prince Kale, his life returning in front of my eyes, was proof enough. So what do you want me to do? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I need you to stay here, Mia, King Alaric said, his voice steady and commanding. I need you to help Kale wake up fully. I don't know how this will work, but we have to try. I nodded, still unsure of what I was agreeing to, but there was no turning back now. I had already been part of this story. We will need to break the curse completely, King Alaric continued. And that means understanding how your bloodline connects to his. There's more to this than we know. I felt a cold chill run down my spine at his words. I had no idea how to break a curse, especially one as ancient as this. But as I looked at Prince Kale, his eyes still flickering with life, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't walk away. I had already done something that no one else had been able to do. And maybe, just maybe, I could help him fully awaken. The days that followed were a blur. King Alaric had me stay in the castle, in a room that was more luxurious than anything I had ever imagined. But the grandeur of the place did nothing to ease the growing unease I felt in my chest. The castle felt like a place of secrets, its stone walls holding more than just memories. The servants, though polite, treated me with an odd mixture of curiosity and caution, as if they, too, were unsure of my place in all of this. Prince Kale remained in his bed, his condition improving slowly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were only scratching the surface of something much darker. Every night, I would sit by his side, my hand resting gently on his, and I would try to will him to wake up, to speak, to tell me what was happening. But there were no answers. And then, one night, as I sat by his side, I felt something shift. His fingers moved again, just slightly, but enough to make my heart race. I leaned in closer, holding my breath. Kale, I whispered, my voice trembling. His eyes opened a little wider this time, and for the first time in years, he seemed to focus on me. Mia, he whispered, his voice hoarse, but clear. My heart skipped a beat. He had spoken my name. I had woken him, truly woken him. But the curse was not gone yet. I knew there was still much to do. And as I looked into his amber eyes, I knew that this was only the beginning of something much larger than either of us could understand. I sat by Prince Kale's side, my hand gently resting on his. His breathing had become steadier over the past few days, but his eyes remained closed. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing, that the curse wasn't fully broken yet. Despite the signs of life I had witnessed, there was a sense of uncertainty in the air. King Alaric had told me that I was the key to waking his son, but I had no idea how I could help more than I already had. Each time I sat with him, I felt a strange pull in my chest, as if the bond between us was growing stronger. But it was hard to ignore the nagging doubt that maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I wasn't powerful enough to finish what I had started. King Alaric had assured me that I wasn't alone in this, but I still felt so small in the face of it all. The weight of responsibility was heavy on my shoulders. I glanced over at the king, who was sitting by the window, staring out into the night. He hadn't said much in the last few hours, his expression unreadable. I had seen the way his eyes softened when he looked at his son, but now they seemed distant, lost in thought. What's on your mind? I asked, breaking the silence. King Alaric turned to face me, his amber eyes locking onto mine. I'm thinking about the prophecy, he said quietly. The one that says a healer of blood will break the curse on my son. I frowned, confused. You've never mentioned a prophecy before, I said. What does it mean? King Alaric stood and walked toward me, his movements slow and deliberate. It's an old prophecy, one that was passed down through my family for centuries, he explained. It speaks of a healer, someone with the ability to undo the curse that binds my son. But there's more to it. The prophecy says that the healer must have the blood of the cursed one in their veins. That's the only way to truly break the curse. My heart skipped a beat. You mean my blood? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. King Alaric nodded. Yes, it's the only explanation that makes sense. Your touch awakened Kale, but it's your bloodline that holds the true key. I could feel my world shifting beneath me, the ground beneath my feet suddenly feeling unsteady. But I don't have any special abilities, I said, shaking my head. I'm just a waitress. I don't understand any of this. King Alaric stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. You may not understand it now, but you are part of something much bigger than you realize. Your blood is connected to Kale's in ways we don't yet fully understand. And that's why you're here. I stared at him, the gravity of his words sinking in. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about something ancient, something far beyond my control. I felt a mixture of fear and awe. How was I supposed to break a curse that had lasted for centuries? How could I, a normal person, be the key to this ancient prophecy? King Alaric seemed to sense my hesitation. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm but reassuring. I know this is overwhelming, Mia, he said softly. But you don't have to do this alone. We will figure it out together. You've already done more than anyone else could. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing thoughts. There was no turning back now. I had already been pulled into this world, and it seemed like I had a role to play whether I was ready for it or not. What do I need to do? I asked, my voice steadier now. King Alaric looked at me, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. We need to find the source of the curse, he said. And for that, we need to understand how your bloodline is connected to Kale's. There are ancient texts, scrolls that speak of a ritual that can break the curse. But we don't have much time. I nodded, determination slowly replacing the doubt in my mind. I'll do whatever it takes, I said. If it means helping Kale, then I'll find the answers. King Alaric smiled, a rare and fleeting expression that made him appear more human than I had ever seen him before. Thank you, Mia, he said, his voice full of gratitude. You don't know how much this means to me. The days that followed were filled with research and searching. King Alaric and I spent hours in the castle's library, combing through ancient texts and scrolls. The language was difficult to understand, filled with old symbols and forgotten words, but we pressed on. I began to understand more about the curse and the bloodlines, and slowly, we pieced together the puzzle. The connection between my blood and Kale's was stronger than I had realized. There were hints of magic, threads, of power that had been dormant for generations. But the curse was deep, rooted in something ancient, something I couldn't yet fully comprehend. As I sat at the desk, surrounded by scrolls and books, I felt a presence behind me. I turned to find King Alaric standing there, watching me with an unreadable expression. What's wrong? I asked, sensing the shift in his mood. I'm afraid we may be running out of time, he said quietly. The curse is tied to a powerful force, one that doesn't want to be broken. And whoever cast it on Kale will do anything to stop us. A chill ran down my spine at his words. Whoever was behind this curse wasn't going to give up easily. We had to be careful. We had to move quickly. Then we need to be ready, I said, standing up from the desk. We can't let fear stop us now. King Alaric nodded, his gaze filled with pride. Together, we'll find a way. The determination in his eyes was contagious. I knew that we had a long road ahead of us, but we were in this together. And we would break the curse. We had to. For Kale. For all of us. I woke up to the sound of a storm raging outside, the wind howling against the ancient stone walls of the castle. My body felt stiff from the long hours I had spent poring over ancient texts, but my mind was still sharp, alert to the looming threat that hung over us. King Alaric had been right. The curse was not going to break easily, and the more we uncovered, the clearer it became that something dark and powerful was determined to stop us. Despite all our research, we had not found the final piece of the puzzle. The bloodline connection between my family and Kale's was undeniable, but the exact nature of the magic was still a mystery. I had been told that my blood was the key to breaking the curse, but I had no idea how that could be possible. I wasn't a witch. I wasn't a healer. I was just a girl who had accidentally awakened a prince who had been cursed for 50 years. But as the days passed, the connection between Kale and I grew stronger. Every time I touched him, every time I spoke to him, something shifted. His breathing was steadier, his skin warmer, and though he still couldn't speak, his eyes would follow me as if he was trying to communicate something. King Alaric had made it clear that I needed to stay close to him, that I was somehow the key to waking him fully, but the uncertainty gnawed at me. I wasn't sure what would happen next, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could stay here, trapped in this world of darkness and ancient magic. The tension was thick in the air, the sense of impending danger growing with every passing day. Mia, King Alaric's voice broke through my thoughts, pulling me from my reverie. I turned to see him standing in the doorway, his posture regal but his eyes filled with concern. "We need to talk," he said, stepping into the room. I nodded, my heart racing as I followed him to the small table where we had been working together for the past few days. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We've uncovered a lot, but we're still missing something crucial," he said, his voice low and intense. "The curse is tied to an ancient magic, and I fear that whoever cast it on Kale is not going to let us break it without a fight." A shiver ran down my spine at his words. I had known that the curse was powerful, but the idea that someone might try to stop us made everything feel even more dangerous. "Who do you think is behind it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. King Alaric's gaze darkened. "There are many enemies who would want to see my family fall," he said, his voice laced with anger. "But there is one person who stands out, a powerful sorcerer who has been after my throne for centuries." "A sorcerer?" I repeated, my mind racing. "But why would they curse Kale?" King Alaric let out a heavy sigh. "The curse on Kale was never just about him. It was meant to weaken me, to tear my family apart. If Kale remains asleep, I am vulnerable. If the curse is broken, I will be stronger than ever." His words made sense, but they also filled me with dread. Whoever was behind this curse wasn't going to stop until they had everything they wanted, and that meant we were in a race against time. "What can we do?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "We need to find the source of the magic," King Alaric said, his eyes narrowing with determination. "We need to find out who cast the curse and why. Only then can we break it for good." "But how do we find them?" I asked. "How do we even begin to track down someone so powerful?" King Alaric met my gaze, his expression hardening. "I've already started," he said. "I've sent scouts to look for any trace of the sorcerer. But we may have to take matters into our own hands." My stomach turned at the thought. We were dealing with forces far beyond anything I had ever imagined, and now I was expected to help take down a powerful sorcerer. "What do you need me to do?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. King Alaric stepped closer to me, his gaze softening. "I need you to stay close to Kale," he said. "The closer you are to him, the stronger the connection between you two will grow. The more power you can bring to the magic, the better our chances of breaking the curse." I nodded, but doubt still lingered in my mind. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep up this act. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't a sorceress. I was just a girl who had stumbled into a world of ancient power, and now I was expected to save a prince from a curse I didn't even understand. The weight of it all felt too much to bear. King Alaric seemed to sense my hesitation. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his touch reassuring but firm. "You're not alone in this, Mia," he said. "I'll be with you every step of the way. Together, we'll break the curse. Together, we'll protect Kale and our future." His words gave me a small sense of comfort, but deep down, I knew we were facing an enemy unlike anything I had ever encountered. As the days wore on, I stayed by Kale's side, hoping that with every touch, with every word, we could make progress. But the sense of danger loomed ever closer, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. I woke up the next morning with a sense of unease gnawing at my insides. The castle, once imposing and beautiful, now felt suffocating, like the walls themselves were closing in. I had spent so much time at Kale's side, trying to keep him calm, hoping that my presence could help him awaken fully, but the weight of the curse still hung over us. It was as though something, or someone, was keeping us from breaking free. King Alaric had been more distant these past few days, his concern for his son evident, but his mind seemed preoccupied with something I didn't understand. I knew we were close to a solution, but every day that passed without a breakthrough made the uncertainty harder to bear. I stood in front of the mirror, brushing my hair, my mind racing. Was I truly the key to breaking this curse? Could the bloodline connection that had been revealed truly be the answer? I didn't feel powerful or magical. I felt like a girl who had gotten too deep into a world she didn't belong in. My thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Mia? It was King Alaric's voice, low and steady. Are you awake? I nodded to myself and opened the door to find him standing there, his eyes filled with both determination and something softer, concern. I need you to come with me, he said quietly. We've received word about the sorcerer. My heart skipped a beat. The sorcerer. The one who had cursed Kale all those years ago. I had been waiting for this moment, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for the danger that lay ahead. But there was no turning back now. I followed him through the long corridors of the castle, the walls now feeling colder, more oppressive. We passed through the ornate hallways where servants moved quickly and quietly, their eyes avoiding ours. There was a sense of urgency in the air. We arrived at a small, hidden room deep within the castle, a place I had never been before. It was dark and dimly lit, with strange symbols carved into the stone walls. King Alaric stepped inside and motioned for me to follow. This is the room where we keep the most dangerous artifacts, he said quietly, his voice laced with caution. And it's where we keep the records of the sorcerer's past. My eyes widened. The sorcerer's past? What could possibly be written in these records? I had no idea how much. Darker this situation could get. King Alaric moved to a desk in the center of the room, where a large, old book lay open. He flipped through the pages carefully, his finger tracing the ancient text. The sorcerer we're looking for, he began, is known as Vortiga, a dark mage who has been hunting my family for centuries. He is the one who cursed Kale, and he is the one who will stop at nothing to see us fall. My stomach turned at the mention of his name. Vortiga, I repeated, barely able to get the words out. He's still alive? King Alaric nodded grimly. Yes. Vampires like me don't age the same way humans do, and neither do dark mages. Vortiga has been hiding in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, that moment has come. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. How had we let this happen? How had we been so blind to the threat that had been looming over us for so long? King Alaric closed the book, his face hardening. We need to find him before he finds us, he said, his voice firm. We have the advantage right now, but not for long. The prophecy is clear. If we don't act quickly, the curse will become permanent. My heart raced in my chest. It felt like the walls were closing in on me, like time was running out. I wasn't sure how much more I could handle, but I knew one thing. I couldn't back down now. I couldn't let the curse claim Kale, or let this sorcerer destroy everything we had fought for. King Alaric turned to face me, his gaze unwavering. I need your help, Mia, he said, his voice softer than before. I can't do this alone. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what I was agreeing to. What do you need me to do? He stepped closer, his expression serious. You've already done so much. But now, we need to find the source of Vortiga's power. We need to find the one thing he's been searching for, an artifact that can break the curse once and for all. I swallowed hard. An artifact? Yes, he said. It's hidden somewhere in the castle, and we need to find it before Vortiga does. We're running out of time. I nodded again, my heart racing. This was it. The final step. The moment that would determine everything. But as I followed King Alaric through the dark, winding corridors of the castle, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. We were about to face the most dangerous enemy I had ever imagined, and there was no turning back. When we reached the secret room deep beneath the castle, King Alaric motioned for me to stay back. This is the heart of the castle, he said. The artifact is hidden in here. But be careful. Vortiga has already made his move. The air in the room was thick with tension as I waited for King Alaric to unlock the final chamber. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a dark stone chamber filled with ancient relics. I could feel the weight of the curse in the air, and I knew we were about to face our greatest challenge yet. King Alaric stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room. We need to find it, he said. and we need to find it fast. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. This was our last chance to break the curse, and I couldn't let it slip away. I stepped into the dark chamber, the air heavy with centuries of forgotten history. The stone walls seemed to pulse with a low hum, as if the very foundations of the castle were aware of what we were about to do. King Alaric led the way, his eyes scanning the room with a mixture of determination and wariness. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. This was it. We had found the hidden room beneath the castle, the heart of all the magic and secrets that had been buried for so long. King Alaric stopped in front of a large stone pedestal, its surface covered in ancient symbols that shimmered faintly in the dim light. "This is where the artifact is hidden," he said, his voice low and tense. "But be warned, Mia. The magic here is unlike anything we've encountered before." I nodded, trying to steady my breath. The uncertainty in the air was thick, and I could sense the danger lurking around us. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew that we had no choice but to move forward. King Alaric stepped closer to the pedestal, his hand hovering just above it, as if feeling for something. His eyes closed for a moment, and I could hear him muttering something under his breath, an incantation, maybe, or a prayer. The air seemed to grow colder as he began to speak, and the ground beneath us rumbled slightly. "It's here," he said, his voice filled with quiet awe. "The artifact. But we must be careful. It's bound to the curse on Kale." He opened his eyes and looked at me. "Mia, this artifact is the key. But to unlock its power, we need more than just our will. We need a blood bond." A chill ran down my spine. A blood bond. I wasn't sure I understood what he meant, but the look in his eyes told me that this wasn't something we could just talk our way through. "What do you mean, a blood bond?" I asked, my voice trembling. King Alaric didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned his gaze back to the pedestal, his expression hardening. "The artifact is tied to bloodlines. Not just any blood, but the blood of those who are connected to the curse. You and Kale share this connection. Your blood, your bond to him, is what will give us the strength to break the curse once and for all." I swallowed hard. "So I need to what?" "Use my blood." King Alaric nodded slowly. "Yes, your blood will unlock the magic that has kept Kale bound to the curse. But it's dangerous. The magic here is ancient, and if we're not careful, it could consume you." I looked down at my hands, feeling the weight of what he was asking. This was more than I had ever signed up for. But as I glanced over at Prince Kale, still unconscious and pale, something inside me stirred. I couldn't let him stay trapped in that cursed state. I had to do whatever it took to help him. "I'll do it," I said, my voice steady despite the fear that threatened to overtake me. King Alaric met my gaze, his eyes softening for the briefest moment. "You're stronger than you realize, Mia," he said quietly. "But remember, once we begin, there is no going back." He moved toward the pedestal and placed his hand on it, and the symbols on its surface began to glow brighter. The hum in the air grew louder, and I could feel the magic swirling around us. "Prepare yourself," he said, his tone serious. "This will test you in ways you cannot imagine." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. King Alaric stepped aside, leaving the pedestal open for me. I could feel the power emanating from it, ancient and cold. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward and placed my hand on the stone. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, a surge of energy coursed through me, and I gasped. The magic in the room seemed to come alive, swirling around us in a violent, electric storm. The pedestal began to tremble, and the symbols carved into the stone glowed with an intensity that nearly blinded me. King Alaric's voice cut through the chaos. "Now, Mia, you must let the bond flow. Let the blood bond between you and Kale awaken." I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. The pain in my chest was almost unbearable, but I focused on the task at hand. I could feel Kale's presence in the back of my mind, a faint pull, like a thread tethering us together. I reached out with my senses, allowing the magic to flow through me, drawing on the connection that had formed between us. The storm of energy intensified, and I felt a sharp pain in my wrist as the bond took hold. I gasped, my vision blurring. The pain was overwhelming, but I couldn't stop. I could feel Kale's pulse, weak but steady, in my mind. The magic was working. I could feel it. The bond was forming. "You're doing it," King Alaric said, his voice strained. "Just a little longer, Mia. We're almost there." The pain in my chest grew sharper, but I gritted my teeth and held on. I had to do this. For Kale. For Alaric. For everything that was at stake. And then, with a final surge of power, the magic exploded outward in a brilliant flash of light. I stumbled back, my body exhausted and trembling, but I knew it was done. The curse had been broken. Kale's body, which had been still for so long, shifted. His chest rose and fell, the warmth of life returning to him. I couldn't breathe as I watched him, waiting for the final sign that he was truly awake. And then, slowly, his eyes fluttered open, and he looked at me. "Mia," he whispered, his voice hoarse but filled with recognition. I smiled, tears welling in my eyes. He was alive. Finally, alive. I stood there, my heart still racing, as I watched Kale's eyes flutter open. The room, which had felt so cold and empty moments before, suddenly seemed alive, filled with the warmth of his returned consciousness. His gaze locked onto mine, and for the first time in years, there was a spark of life in his eyes. I could hardly believe it. It was as if the world had stopped spinning for a moment, and everything had come back to life. "Mia." His voice was weak, barely a whisper, but it carried a depth of emotion that made my chest tighten. I felt a tear slip down my cheek before I could stop it. "You're awake," I whispered, my voice trembling with relief. "You're really awake." Kale's lips curled into the faintest of smiles. "I feel different," he said, his voice hoarse. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. There was so much I wanted to say, so many questions that needed answers, but I couldn't find the words. For years, Kale had been trapped, frozen in a curse that no one could break. But now, here he was, breathing, awake, and looking at me like I was the reason for his return. And that's when it hit me. He knew. He knew I had been the key. "What happened?" Kale asked, his brow furrowing in confusion as he shifted slightly in the bed. "How long has it been?" His voice carried a mix of curiosity and disbelief, like he couldn't quite grasp the passage of time. 50 years, I whispered, still processing the enormity of the situation. "You've been asleep, trapped in that curse for 50 years. Kale's expression darkened, and for a moment, he looked as though the weight of that knowledge had hit him hard. 50 years, he repeated, almost to himself, as if trying to piece together the fragments of his lost time. He struggled to sit up, and I moved to help him, my hands shaking. I wanted to be there for him, to offer him whatever comfort I could, but I didn't know what to say. "What's happening?" Kale asked, his voice stronger now, though still laced with confusion. "How are you here? How did you wake me?" His eyes searched mine, and I saw the trust in them, the hope. It was overwhelming. "It was the curse," I said softly, trying to explain everything I had learned in the past few days. "I broke it. My blood, my connection to you, was the key." He looked at me in disbelief, as if he couldn't quite understand. "Your blood?" he repeated, his voice tinged with awe and confusion. "But why?" I took a deep breath, gathering the courage to explain. "I don't know how, or why, but somehow my blood is tied to yours. The prophecy, the curse, it all pointed to me." Kale's expression grew more intense, his eyes searching mine for answers. "You've been through so much," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I can't believe you've been carrying this burden for me." His words struck me deeply, and I felt a lump form in my throat. "I didn't ask for any of this," I said quietly, my voice trembling. "I was just trying to survive. But when I touched you, when I saw the curse was real, I couldn't walk away." Kale's gaze softened, and he reached for my hand, holding it gently in his. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver down my spine. "Thank you," he said, his voice full of gratitude. "You've done more than anyone else could. You've saved me." I shook my head, still trying to process everything. "I didn't save you, Kale," I whispered. "You're the one who came back. You're the one who fought through the curse." He gave a small smile, his fingers tightening around mine. "We fought together," he said softly. "And now we need to figure out what comes next." His words hung in the air, and I realized that this was just the beginning. We had broken the curse, but the battle was far from over. I couldn't ignore the dark reality that still loomed over us. The sorcerer, the one who had cursed Kale in the first place, was still out there. And if he had any idea that we had broken the curse, he would stop at nothing to destroy everything we had worked for. "The sorcerer," I said, my voice barely a whisper, as if saying his name might make him real again. Kale's expression hardened. "Vortiga," he muttered, his tone filled with disdain. He's the one who cursed me, the one who has been trying to tear my family apart for centuries. The weight of his words sank into me. The sorcerer wasn't just some distant figure. He was an immediate threat, one we had to face head-on. We need to stop him, I said, my voice firm. Cale nodded, his eyes blazing with determination. We will, he said. But we need to be prepared. Vortiga is powerful, and he won't stop until he gets what he wants. I felt a surge of resolve rise within me. Then we'll stop him. Together. I knew the path ahead would be dangerous, filled with unimaginable challenges. But now, with Cale awake and by my side, I felt like we could face anything. Our fight wasn't just against the curse. It was against the dark forces that sought to destroy everything we cared about. And we were ready to take them on. Together. I stood with Cale by my side, feeling the weight of our decision pressing on both of us. The curse had been broken, but we both knew that this was only the beginning. The real challenge lay ahead. Vortiga, the sorcerer who had cast the curse on Cale, was still out there, and his power was not to be underestimated. We had to stop him before he could destroy everything we had fought for. What's our first move? I asked, my voice steady but laced with urgency. Cale looked at me, his amber eyes filled with determination. We find him before he finds us, he said, his voice low but firm. Vortiga won't rest until he has what he wants. We need to track him down and end this once and for all. The reality of the situation began to sink in. We weren't just fighting a curse anymore. We were fighting a dark force, a powerful sorcerer who had been plotting for centuries. And I, a simple girl who had stumbled into this world, was now an integral part of the battle. I had no special powers, no magical abilities, but I had something else, something that had awakened within me when I touched Cale, something that connected me to him and the ancient magic that bound him. It was a force I couldn't explain, but it was real. I had to trust it. Where do we even begin? I asked, my voice quieter now. Cale's gaze was intense as he looked at me. There's an old coven, he said, his voice full of conviction. Vortiga's allies. They've been hidden for centuries, but they still possess knowledge of the magic he uses. We need to find them. I felt a shiver run down my spine. A coven? Allies? This was getting darker by the minute. But I couldn't back down. Not now. And how do we find them? I asked. Cale reached for my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. We follow the trail. Vortiga's magic leaves a mark, and it's something we can trace. I've done it before, but this time, we'll need your help. I looked at him, my heart pounding in my chest. My help? But I don't know anything about magic. Cale interrupted me gently. You do know something. Your blood, your touch, Mia, they're powerful. We just need to figure out how to harness that power. Together. His words filled me with a strange sense of calm. I wasn't alone in this. We were in this together, and somehow, that made me feel stronger. Okay, I said, nodding. Let's do this. We spent the next few days preparing for the journey ahead. The castle, once a place of refuge, now felt more like a fortress, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into something we couldn't control. Cale and I trained together, learning how to use the power I had unknowingly tapped into. Each time we touched, I felt the bond between us grow stronger, the magic flowing more freely. But there were still so many unanswered questions. How had I come to be connected to Cale in this way? What exactly was the power I had awakened within myself? And what was the price we would have to pay to stop Vortiga? It was overwhelming, but with Cale by my side, I felt like we could face anything. One evening, as we sat together in the library, looking over ancient texts, King Alaric entered the room. His face was grim, his usual calm demeanor replaced by an urgency I hadn't seen before. I found something, he said, holding up a scroll. It's about Vortiga. The magic he wields, it's ancient and dangerous, but there's one way to counter it. One way to defeat him for good. My heart raced as I looked at the scroll in his hand. What is it? I asked. King Alaric unrolled the scroll, revealing a map, a series of runes, and a detailed explanation of an ancient ritual. This, he said, pointing to the map, is where we'll find the source of his power. It's located deep in the mountains, a place that is said to be cursed, even by the most powerful sorcerers. I swallowed hard. A cursed place? That sounded like exactly where we needed to be. And what do we have to do when we get there? I asked, my voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside me. King Alaric looked at me, his expression serious. The ritual requires both of you, he said, turning to Kale and then to me. Your blood, Mia, combined with Kale's, it will break Vortiga's hold. But it's dangerous. If we're not careful, it could cost us everything. I felt a cold chill settle in my chest. Everything, I echoed. King Alaric nodded solemnly. Yes, this is the final step, but it's not without its risks. Kale's gaze met mine, and I could see the weight of this decision in his eyes. He had already been through so much, and now he was asking me to take another step into the unknown with him. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. We'll do it, I said, my voice strong. We'll stop him. Together. King Alaric nodded approvingly. Then we leave tomorrow, he said. The room fell silent, the air thick with the gravity of our decision. I knew what was at stake, but I also knew that we couldn't back down. The only way forward was through. And so, the next day, we set out. Our destination was clear, but the path ahead was uncertain. As we made our way toward the mountains, I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. We were about to face our greatest challenge yet. But one thing was certain. I would stand by Kale's side, no matter what it took. Together, we would face Vortiga, and we would break the curse once and for all. I had never felt a weight so heavy as the one I carried now. The journey ahead would take us into the heart of darkness, a cursed place where no one dared to venture. As the wind howled through the mountains, I couldn't help but think about how far we had come, and how much further we still had to go. Kale and I walked side by side, the map in his hand guiding us through the narrow, treacherous paths. The air was thick with a sense of impending doom, and every step we took seemed to echo in the emptiness of the mountains. The cold bit at my skin, but it was nothing compared to the chill I felt in my bones. This was no ordinary mission. We were heading straight into the heart of Vortiga's power, to a place that held the answers we desperately needed, but that might also be our undoing. Do you feel it? I asked, breaking the silence that had settled over us. Kale looked at me, his amber eyes sharp and focused. Yes, he replied, his voice low and steady. It's like the air is charged with magic. We're getting closer. I nodded, feeling the tension in the air. We were nearing the place where the ancient ritual would take place, the place that held the source of Vortiga's power, the place that, if we didn't act fast enough, could consume us all. The path ahead grew steeper, and the further we walked, the more the ground seemed to shake beneath us. A part of me wanted to turn back, to return to the safety of the castle, but I couldn't. I had made a choice, and that choice had led me here, to the very edge of everything. Kale stopped suddenly, his hand reaching out to steady me as the ground beneath our feet trembled. We're close, he said, his voice tinged with urgency. We have to be careful. This place is ancient, and it's not forgiving. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. What do we do now? We must complete the ritual, Kale said. It's the only way to break the curse once and for all. But we need the artifact. Without it, we have no power to defeat Vortiga. The weight of his words hung in the air. This was it. The final step. We had come so far, but there was still so much we didn't know. The sorcerer, Vortiga, was a formidable enemy, and I could feel his presence in the very air around us. The time for hesitation had passed. We had no choice but to continue forward. Stay close, Kale whispered as he led the way, his steps silent against the rocky terrain. We can't let anything distract us. The artifact is the key to everything. We walked in silence for what felt like hours, the path narrowing until it was little more than a thin, winding ledge. The mountain loomed above us, its jagged peaks reaching toward the sky, as if to pierce the very heavens. We reached a plateau, and before us stood a massive stone door, ancient and covered in moss. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. The markings etched into the surface of the door were unlike any language I recognized, but I could feel the magic pulsing beneath it. This is it, Kale said, his voice steady but filled with awe. The entrance to the heart of the curse. The artifact is inside. I could feel my heart racing as I stepped forward, my fingers grazing the cold stone of the door. The energy in the air was thick, charged with dark magic, and it was almost suffocating. Kale reached out, his hand brushing mine as he stepped forward. We need to open it together, he said. The magic is tied to both of us. Our connection is the key. I nodded, taking a deep breath as I reached out to touch the door. As soon as my hand made contact, a surge of energy shot through me, and I gasped, stumbling back. The door rumbled, as if alive, and slowly began to open, revealing a dark, cavernous space beyond. The air was thick with power, and the sound of distant whispers echoed from within. "It's here," Kale said, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and resolve. "This is where we end it." Together, we stepped through the door, and the world seemed to shift. Inside the cavern, the walls were lined with strange symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. The ground beneath us trembled with each step, and I could feel the pulse of ancient magic surrounding us. "The artifact," Kale murmured, his voice filled with awe. In the center of the cavern stood a pedestal, and upon it rested a glowing object. A stone, but one unlike any I had ever seen. It radiated power, dark and ancient. The artifact, the key to everything. "This is it," Kale said, stepping forward, his hand reaching out toward the stone. "Once we have this, we can break the curse." But as his fingers brushed the artifact, a low, menacing laugh filled the air, sending a chill down my spine. "You think it's that easy?" A voice sneered from the shadows. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. The air grew colder, and I knew, without a doubt, that we weren't alone anymore. The figure stepped from the shadows, his tall form cloaked in dark robes. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light. "Vortiga," Kale hissed, stepping back. "I knew you would come." The sorcerer's laugh echoed again, louder this time, as he raised his hand. "You've come too late," he said, his voice filled with malice. "This is my domain. You're nothing but pawns in a game you don't understand." I could feel the magic in the air thickening, like a storm ready to strike. We had come so far, but it seemed that the battle was far from over. Vortiga was here, and we had to stop him before it was too late. I felt the ground beneath my feet tremble as Vortiga stepped out from the shadows, his presence filling the cavern with an oppressive darkness. The air grew cold, sharp, as though it had turned to ice, and the once faint whispers of magic now roared around us. Kale and I stood frozen, facing the sorcerer who had caused so much pain, so much suffering. "You've come too late," Vortiga's voice rang out, cruel and mocking. "This is my domain. You're nothing but pawns in a game you don't understand." His eyes glowed with the same unnatural amber light that Kale's had, only darker, more twisted. The sorcerer's power was palpable, thick in the air, and it felt like it was pressing down on me, suffocating me. I glanced at Kale, but his expression was steely, his eyes narrowed in concentration. "We have no time for your games, Vortiga," Kale said, his voice firm, his tone unwavering. "You've taken enough. This ends now." The sorcerer laughed, a sound so chilling it echoed through the cavern, making the very walls seem to shake. "You think you can stop me?" he sneered. "You and your little human friend? Your efforts are futile. The curse on you was never meant to be broken." I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. The tension in the air was unbearable, and the power radiating from Vortiga made my skin crawl. This was it. The battle I had feared but knew was inevitable. "We're not afraid of you," I said, my voice trembling despite myself. But Kale's hand found mine, steadying me, grounding me. He squeezed my hand tightly, and I felt a surge of warmth and strength rush through me, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this. "You've underestimated us," Kale said, his voice now colder, stronger, filled with an authority I hadn't heard before. "You may have cursed me, but you don't understand what you're dealing with. You won't break me. You won't break her." Vortiga's smile faltered, his eyes flashing with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Was it surprise? Or something darker, more dangerous? "Your connection," Vortiga said, his voice sharp. "It's stronger than I expected. But it doesn't matter. The artifact you seek," he raised his hand, and the air around us seemed to bend, crackling with dark energy, "is already mine. The power it holds will never be yours." As his words hung in the air, the stone pedestal in the center of the cavern began to shake, the ground beneath our feet quaking. A brilliant, almost blinding light exploded from the pedestal, and the artifact, the glowing stone that had been the key to everything, rose from its resting place, suspended in midair. It glowed with an intensity that rivaled the sun, casting long shadows across the cavern. I could feel the raw power of it, as if it was calling to me, but at the same time, I could feel the darkness swirling around it, threatening to consume everything. "No!" Kale shouted, his voice filled with urgency. That's not the way. The artifact is tied to the curse. We can't let him control it. I turned to Kale, panic rising in my chest. What do we do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Kale's gaze was intense, his grip on my hand tightening. We fight, he said simply. And just like that, I knew what I had to do. My blood, my connection to him, was the key. We weren't going to win this battle through force alone. We had to use the magic that flowed between us. I closed my eyes, focusing on the bond one felt with Kale. The pulse of his magic, the pulse of mine. The way our energies had intertwined since the moment we had first touched. I reached deep within myself, calling on that connection, calling on the power that lay dormant within me, and I could feel the magic respond. I raised my hand, and a brilliant light erupted from my fingertips, a wave of power that collided with the dark energy Vortigo was wielding. The sorcerer's eyes widened, his lips curling into a snarl as he tried to fight back, but the energy I was channeling seemed to overwhelm him. You can't fight what's inside you, Vortigo, I said, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. This power doesn't belong to you anymore. Vortigo staggered back, a look of disbelief crossing his face. He tried to raise his hands, to summon more magic, but the bond between Kale and me was too strong, too pure. I could feel Kale's energy flowing through me, steady and unwavering, amplifying my own. Together, we were unstoppable. With one final push, the energy I summoned exploded outward, engulfing the sorcerer in a blinding light. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The cavern was silent, the air still. And then, just as quickly, the light faded. Vortigo was gone. The pedestal that had once glowed with dark power was now dim, lifeless. The curse that had bound Kale for so long had been broken. We had won. I stood there, panting, my body shaking with the aftermath of the battle. Kale, too, seemed exhausted, but his face was filled with relief, with something else, something I couldn't quite name. He stepped forward, taking my hand in his. We did it, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. It's over. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to believe it. The battle was won. The curse was broken. We were free. But even as I stood there, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders, I knew that our journey wasn't over. There would be challenges ahead, but for now, in this moment, we had conquered the darkness. Together, the sun rose slowly over the mountains, casting a soft golden light across the land as I stood on the balcony of the castle, watching the world come alive. It felt like a new beginning, the weight of the past finally lifting. The curse was broken, Vortigo was gone, and Kale was free. But even as the warmth of the sun touched my skin, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only just begun to understand the full scope of what we had faced. Kale came up behind me, his footsteps soft on the stone floor. He stood beside me, his presence steady and reassuring. The world feels different now, he said quietly, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and wonder. It's as if everything has changed, but it hasn't. Not really. I turned to look at him, my heart swelling with emotions I couldn't quite put into words. It has changed, I said softly. For you. For both of us. He smiled at me, a rare, genuine smile that seemed to light up his entire face. You know, I thought I had lost everything, he said, his gaze meeting mine. I thought I would never be free, that the curse would be my prison forever. But you gave me my life back. I reached out and took his hand, my heart racing as the bond between us seemed to deepen with every passing second. We gave each other a second chance, I said, squeezing his hand gently. And now we can live it. The silence between us was comfortable, filled with understanding and the unspoken promise that we would face whatever came next, together. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but we had come out the other side stronger, closer, and more determined than ever to build a future free from the shadows of the past. But what now? I asked, breaking the silence. What do we do now that the curse is broken and Vortigo is gone? Kale's expression grew thoughtful. We rebuild, he said firmly. The curse is gone, but the scars it left behind will take time to heal. We need to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. I nodded, understanding the weight of his words. The world was a complicated place, and we couldn't simply erase the past. But we could shape the future, and that was a powerful thing. We'll rebuild together, I said, smiling. And we'll make sure that no one else has to suffer like you did. Kale returned my smile, his eyes full of hope. Together, he echoed. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The battle was over, but the journey wasn't. There was still so much to explore, so much to learn. But whatever came next, I knew we would face it side by side, with the strength of our bond and the lessons we had learned along the way. As we stood there, watching the sun rise higher in the sky, I couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning of something beautiful. The past was behind us, and the future stretched out before us like an open road, full of endless possibilities. With Kale by my side, I knew there was nothing we couldn't face. And together, we would write our own story, one free from the curse, free from the darkness, and filled with the light of a love that had triumphed over all. The end of one chapter was just the beginning of another, and we were ready to live it, together,